Hey, welcome everyone. We have a special report for you today. We also just learned that the Dakota Access Pipeline is live. It is pumping oil through. This is after 3 leaks in South Dakota, well, 1 leak in South Dakota, 2 in North Dakota. And also there was a recent leak of information that came out that affirmed that TigerSwan, a private security corporation, was hired to provide security around the Dakota Access Pipeline and provide information to energy transfer partners, along with state law enforcement agencies and federal law enforcement agencies. This came out from the Intercept. One of the co-writers was Alleen Brown, who we're going to bring in right now and basically talk about what this article is, what it means. And here we have Alleen Brown. If you can introduce yourself and just kind of say a little bit about the article, and we'll just get started.
Yeah, sure. So we received more than 100 sort of daily situation reports from a TigerSwan contractor. So the reports lay out in a lot of detail the surveillance activities of this private security firm that got its start during the Iraq War as sort of a mercenary company contracting with the military and State Department. In addition to the leaked documents, we have more than 1,000 documents obtained via FOIA requests that sort of support a lot of what we see in the leaked documents and expand on them. So, you know, part of what the documents show is the different kinds of tactics used by this private security firm on behalf of energy transfer partners. So there's descriptions of aerial surveillance, infiltration, to create an alternative narrative via social media that supports the goals of energy transfer partners, which is obviously to complete the pipeline and get oil flowing. And they also lay out the way these tactics were used to support the work of advance the work of law enforcement and prosecutors. So information about how TigerSwan was meeting with different sheriffs. They say specifically in a couple of the documents that they have a goal of collecting intelligence that can be used as evidence to aid in prosecutions. And we see, for example, there's one email chain where a U.S. attorney, somebody from the U.S. Attorney's Office, is commenting about how they have direct access to a live feed from a DAPL helicopter, which is, since TigerSwan was sort of managing all of the different security firms involved, I think it's a relatively safe assumption that that's TigerSwan. And, we also see the way this array of federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies were working together against the water protectors. So FBI, DHS, and many other agencies working from the summer.
BIA was involved there. Which is what I mentioned the BIA because when I was out there, I know there was this early on narrative the BIA was this sort of middle force that wasn't taking sides, but when you look at these documents, they obviously were involved in some of these conversations. I wanted to ask a little bit more about TigerSwan. When you say that they were working in the Middle East as contractors, as private security contractors, like what were they doing in the Middle East? What were they doing there before they came here?
The details of their activities in the Middle East are something we're still sort of digging into, but we know that they had contracts in Iraq and Afghanistan, and our understanding is that they sort of came up as a rival to Blackwater, which is this sort of notorious private security firm, mercenary firm, really, that was largely protecting State Department officials, diplomats, and was involved in this awful massacre. We can't call TigerSwan Blackwater, but when we're thinking through what the work of TigerSwan was, I think Blackwater is the company that we know the most about. But yeah, I think there's still a lot of questions about what TigerSwan was was doing and continues to do abroad.
Yeah, but also there was I think within the leaks there was some language that TigerSwan was using to talk about the water protectors. That we can, what was that language exactly? And we can probably assume, or at least draw a link to their work in the Middle East, right, from the language.
Yeah, totally. I mean, they compare in many instances. They compare water protectors to jihadist terrorists, and and they sort of frame this later stage in the movement where people have moved on. A lot of people have moved on to other fights, to post-insurgent or post-war Afghanistan. If post-war Afghanistan is a useful phrase. So they talk about how, they compare water protectors in a lot of detail to individuals pursuing jihad, and really at some points descend into absurd language about we are the protectors, we are the guardians.
And when this language was in like the sit rep reports that they're sending to North Dakota law enforcement and state law enforcement and federal, or was that internal that they talked about?
So that was that particular language. What we have is in the leaked documents is situation reports that were sent to energy transfer partners. So this was the conversation between the security company and their client. They had a real interest in really pushing water protectors as violent actors so that they could keep their contract or keep people on the ground, especially after a lot of people had left camps in North Dakota, for example. We do also have the sort of a version of the situation reports that were shared with law enforcement. I don't believe that the ones we have contain that kind of language, but we really only have a sliver of what was being said and shared with law enforcement. So comparisons to jihad, maybe not, although we have some emails where law enforcement officials are talking about the presence of someone who has a strong female Shia following, and they say that intelligence came from company intel, which again I think we can relatively safely assume is TigerSwan. So I think those sort of Islamophobic narratives, we can assume that those come from TigerSwan and come from their work abroad.
And so TigerSwan's collecting intelligence for Energy Transfer Partners, and they're still doing that, right? They're still contracted by Energy Transfer Partners, from my understanding from y'all's article. And so does that mean that right now, like, they're still collecting information on people who are involved in the No DAPL movement and like tracking them across the country? Is that what's happening?
So the most recent report that we have is May 15th, and they were certainly still doing work in their kind of primary states of interest, which were North Dakota, South Dakota, Illinois, and Iowa. But they also are thinking about actions in other places and sort of referencing other pipelines where people might be going. So I think that these documents don't stray that far outside of the Dakota Access stuff, but it's clear that to me, I think that we can assume that they're interested in finding these kinds of contracts in other places. And yeah.
And one of the things too that TigerSwan was contracted for was to kind of dismantle the movement, right? Like they're collecting intelligence to use that in a way to undercut the movement. From my understanding, from reading that, and it kind of reminded me of this weird, like, it reminded me of COINTELPRO, which is always brought up when we talk about state surveillance. I think within activist circles, they usually reference COINTELPRO, and if you don't know, is a 70s program by the state to undercut the civil rights movement. And they use like letters and they use all sorts of stuff. But now we have this weird instance where they've contracted a private entity to do sort of the same work. And I guess how were they trying to dismantle this movement that shows in the documents? And then also in the documents, it says something about they praised the sheriff's department for their YouTube channel. Was that a suggestion they gave the sheriff's department? Like they should make the YouTube channel? Like I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, so in terms of undermining the movement, I guess one of the more interesting pieces of language in the documents is where they talk about, they repeatedly bring up rifts between natives and non-natives, rifts between people advocating nonviolence and people more interested in violence, or even not violence but more direct actions. So that's a theme that comes up again and again. And in at least one case, they talk about the necessity of exploiting those rifts. So, we have to use our imaginations to some extent as to what that means, but we know, based on the documents and other reporters or other reporting that we've done, that there were infiltrators, TigerSwan was sending infiltrators into some of these circles, whether they were, individual informants that were already part of these communities that were like providing information, or TigerSwan security, working directly for them as operatives. We don't know how many people were there, but the other thing, they also do a lot of media analysis. Like they'll say, oh, this article is going to be used to advance the interests of the pipeline opponents, and this article is really great for us because blah, blah, blah. So, so there was that instance where they were praising media that the sheriff's department was putting out, and which is essentially, I'm not sure exactly what they're referring to, but it's essentially propaganda. And, we know that in some cases, TigerSwan was helping produce propaganda. So in one document, they mentioned the need they mentioned some work they're doing around an information operation with a guy by the name of Robert Rice. And we see later that all these videos by Robert Rice show up on these pages, Defend Iowa and Netizens for Progress and Justice. And, it's him talking about how awful the water protectors are. It's just propaganda. And as soon as we reached out to the pages and to Robert Rice and to TigerSwan, all those videos disappeared. We saved them, but they went away from the Facebook pages. I'm not sure if I answered all your questions, but
no, I think so. And so basically, TigerSwan was trying to create like a media campaign as well to create their so like within the documents too. It says like to try to make like a positive narrative of the police. And I bring up the YouTube because I was on the ground when that YouTube page was made, and I was like, wow, like it looks like they got some funding and somebody's telling them what to do, and you could see. Again, this is speculation, but from being on the ground, like you could watch their media tactics change, and also it seemed when the police were given advice on what they did last time was bad. It's like, hey, like last time when you swept up all of these people, that was a mistake. You should do it this way next time. And then the next time the police showed up, there'd be like a completely different conduct with somebody else sort of leading the team, And so it seemed like there was at least some insight being given to the police of how they should conduct themselves. And I always wondered where it was coming from, because it was obviously coordinated. And the people who, the first police officer groups, like they didn't know what to do, obviously, because they weren't prepared. But then you saw these other kind of groups come in, and then you would watch. I think like the first thing that happened was that, what's it called? The roadblock. That roadblock was a mental game in my head when they put the roadblock in, because it suddenly turned made this other place and then people can look at the other place and be like, the bad people are down there, you know? And that seemed coordinated. There's all these things that seem really coordinated, but again, and I think we spoke about this really briefly when I was reaching out about this interview, is usually when you're in these movement spaces and you're documenting these things, you're hearing all this stuff all around you, and it sounds a little bit like madness, you know, like people being followed, people feel like their phones are tapped, people this, people that, and it's really uneasy, and you're trying to like keep sane while madness is just surrounding you. And we're talking in the documents. There's a point where it mentions the use of a predator drone at some time. And when we were on the ground, we were filming the Yellowbird, the helicopter, in the middle of the night. Oh, it was the plane in the middle of the night, lights off. We're trying to like document that they're flying with their lights off over the camp. And then as we're filming, I remember our videographer is like, "Oh my gosh, look at this, look at this!" And we go over, and in the screen above the plane, there was a little dot that's just circling, way about 20, like just super high up in the air. And we're like, "What can that be?" And all of us like, it's obviously a drone, but how do we just show people the dot and be like, "Here's the drone"? You're like, how do we prove this stuff? And so like I said, it was like a weird relief. Like I think everyone kind of knows this is going on, but when you get a leak like you all got, at least it's verified. You can be like, okay, so I'm not super crazy. Like one, you know, because it does. You know, it feels there's a lot of like when you're in a space that's surveilled 24 hours a day, like it starts to affect the people, you know. And I think that all that's coordinated, and it seemed like was advice that was being given. And I can't say it was from TigerSwan specifically, but it was happening, and there was coordinated efforts to like make the camp uneasy, make the camp face each other in some way. I think also in your documents, and I know I'm speaking a lot, there's a conversation where they were focusing on nonviolence versus violence, and how they could exploit that rift to undercut the movement. And I don't know if you can say more on that, but I was really interested about that because I saw that fight, literal fight between different groups happen almost every day towards the end, you know? And so I was kind of wondering if there's more information on how they were exploiting that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's many more details in the documents about exactly how they were doing that, other than, you know, these sort of fleeting references to like source reporting and, you know, talk of like embedding in the structure of, you know, organizers. And so, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, some of that we kind of have to use our imagination for. And, you know, we are continuing to go through the documents with a fine-tooth comb and are going to ultimately publish all of them. So it's likely, I mean, one of the things we felt was really essential was that we actually publish all these documents, because I think, you know, people who are on the ground like yourself will look at them and see things that we don't. So, you know, so I'm eager for you to be able to look at that and say like, okay, here's.
Oh, it's frozen. So yeah, we're talking a little about the DAPL leaks that came out showing that TigerSwan was in connection with local law enforcement efforts, and at the very least giving situation reports to the local law enforcement on what was going on in the camps and doing their best to get people to infiltrate into the camps and stuff like that. And so we're trying to give you a little more information on that. Thanks for joining us. Occasionally stuff's drops. We got Alleen back here right now. And what were you saying?
I don't know where exactly it cut out, but I think I was saying, you know, we're excited for other people to be able to, people who are on the ground to be able to look through the documents and recognize things that we don't. So, you know, it's clear that they're very interested in rifts within the movement, but we don't know exactly what they were doing to exploit them. I mean, we know there's references to infiltrators. There's also, it's obvious that they're doing a lot on social media. So whether that kind of exploitation of rifts is happening, you know, in person or on social media, it's hard to say. Yeah, and I mean, to your point about seeing the way this stuff impacts movements, I think that's something, you know, we see in the documents pressure, this back and forth between police and this private security firm. We even see one instance where they actually say, we need to get these Iowa counties to put more, you know, to make more arrests and find people more frequently. Let's partner them with Lee County and have Lee County tell them about, their increase in and the way that they're towing cars. So we see them sort of actually talking about putting pressure on law enforcement. But there's also this other kind of impact that TigerSwan's presence and the threat of infiltrators has, which is in like the way people interact with each other. I can't count the number of people I've talked to who have said this person is definitely an infiltrator. And in some cases, people are named that show up in the documents. So this stuff has, many layers of impact on a movement like this.
And yeah, this like also just like the media campaign, like the media campaign you were talking about, like their work to make sure that water protectors looked violent. Like that was literally like what seemed like their goal was to try to create propaganda or media that said that over and over again because they were threatened by media that said that differently. Like they brought up, I think, Red Warrior Camp at one point and showed like a Samuel L. Jackson video where he supported the No DAPL movement, and they're like, this is bad media because it says that the No DAPL movement's good and the police officers are in the wrong. We want to make media that says police officers are doing the right thing and the lawful thing, and these folks are criminals. Yeah, also the Iowa thing you mentioned too was really kind of shocking because, basically it's I assume TigerSwan was again sending information being like, you all should talk to these people and increase people's bails, which people in North Dakota then saw happen. Like if you look at the beginning of these arrests that started happening in No DAPL in North Dakota, at first the charges were low, the fines were low, and then they just instantly kept ramping up as they tried to figure out what they could do to basically stop the movement. And a lot of it was at least, and then North Dakota seemed to be financially motivated, but now of course they can't prove half their charges, it seems like, and they're dismissing them. But initially their goal was to like use that stuff, I think, to kind of like make people worried that their involvement was going to cause this horrible kind of financial and long dragging issues. Anyways, one other thing too I wanted to mention, and we're going to close this out. Thank you so much for your time. There was like around the drill pad there was HESCO barriers, and I thought that was really interesting. We're going to bring up a video of it, I think, here in a second. And from my understanding, these barriers were used in oil rigs in Iraq and Iraq. I don't think it was Afghanistan. Well, in Afghanistan as well. There were common military installations. And so, I don't know, I mean, can we speculate that like that literally, this thing that was created in North Dakota, which was basically a fortress, it had HESCO barriers that were on top, like 12 feet tall. This is all documented, with razor wire on top, and then a ditch, a little moat with more razor wire, and then another thing. Like it was a fortress they created, and then they patrolled it, And I mean, that was probably what they were doing, I assume what they were doing in Iraq. I don't know if you can say that, but I mean, that's what it seems like they were probably doing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Again, like the military and tactical language that comes up again and again in these documents. And I think, I'm not sure if it came through in the documents that we've published so far, but they actually refer to, to what I believe is the Missouri River crossing and the drilling site there as a fortress. So that's very much on their mind. And I mean, again, we have to remember that these guys are mostly former special ops. So a lot of like Delta Force and Rangers is a lot of the people that.
Audio seems to be cutting out. All right, so let's have a little bit of an audio issue on the interview for a second. I just cut out this. We're kind of ending our interview here. We're talking a little bit about TigerSwan, their background in military ops and military, that they're made up of just like ex-military folks, like Delta Force and Rangers, and now they're referring to things in the United States through military language, which I think that the Constitution wouldn't be too down with, but who knows. Yeah, so I mean, I guess what implications do you think this has for movements in general that now, at least it's in the open, I feel like this probably was going on before, but, private institutions are, policing their stuff with private institutions. I guess, I don't know, where's the accountability, I guess, in this sort of stuff? Is there accountability at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm eager to see what the legal community can do with this. I mean, I have hopes that this will have some impact on individuals' cases, or at least allow people to get more information, and make requests based on the documents. But I don't know. I don't have. I mean, I'm worried that law enforcement, in particular, already has so much leeway to surveil people, that even if even if TigerSwan is taking some actions that's getting them intel that they're ultimately feeding back to law enforcement, and the things that TigerSwan did were sort of against.
Let's say it's cutting out one more time. I'm waiting to see if we bring that back. So so we're talking this. We're kind of ending the interview a little bit on just what the implications are that TigerSwan, a private institution, is been contracted by a private institution to provide intel for a public institution. So what does that mean? Alleen, I think you're back right now. If you wanted to just finish that thought on what the implications of that are.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure where I cut out, but I think I was saying that law enforcement has a lot of leeway to surveil people, and I'm not sure if there's a specific law that was broken here. But I think that what we see in these documents, if it's unacceptable to the public, I mean, maybe there could be a push for better rules. Or yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that on an ethical level, and if you're really looking at the Constitution, you could say, hey, this is not right. But I don't know what the legal system can do with what we're seeing here.
I think a little bit about again, private security contractors in the Middle East, where they initially were just kind of doing whatever they wanted because they weren't underneath the rules of war, since they were this weird private institution that was doing war but different, So, and they were able to push all these boundaries that eventually they're accounted for. There's some lawsuits happened, and people were like, you can't be a mercenary, And that's what TigerSwan was referred to in the camps. They're called mercs. Every time that a paid security person was a merc to the people in the camps, and I think that's pretty much true. My last question: can you talk anything about the live feed to the National Security Intelligence Specialists? There's a sentence in there where it sounded like there was a live feed that was going to a person attached to the White House. I think it was November 5th, maybe. I mean, can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I think that was October 12th or something. But yeah, I mean, so that's something that came out of these public information requests, which one of our co-reporters, Will Parrish, has done some amazing work accessing public records. And so there was this group of federal, local, state agencies kind of working together from August, September, doing work on social media, and apparently also occasionally looping in TigerSwan, or at least getting information from them. So yeah, so we see in one of these email chains, I believe, I would have to look back, but I believe there were some individuals from DHS, FBI, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. It was this, national, I can't remember exactly what their title was, but yeah, and then they talk about how they're viewing this live. Yeah, please.
I was the National Security Intelligence Specialist, Terry Van Horn. That was the name. I wrote it down because it sounded like it was a live feed. This person probably was part of the Obama administration, and I was just kind of wow, they had a live feed where this person could be hey, if Obama needs to know, I can just go yell, tell him. I don't know. So I was there's just a point where I read that, it was just Obama was so reserved, you know, initially, like it was really pulled back from this whole movement. But yet, if you look at these documents, it seemed like they were well aware of what was going on. They just weren't acting, at least initially. Yeah, so that's how I felt. But okay, well, again, thanks for joining us, Alleen. I don't know if you want to tell folks like how the folks can get a hold of you or how to follow you. But if you could do that, that'd be really great. I'm sure people want to know. And then thanks for joining us here at Unicorn Riot and giving us some of your time. And the article, of course, is really illuminating. And like you said, like, you know, as I went through it reading, I was just thinking of all these things on the ground that were happening, you know, and just being like, okay, well, here's this thing that reminds me of this, here's this, and it was constant. So, and it was like a comfort for me because I always feel a little crazy, and I mean, I'm sure you use the word crazy. Someone out there is getting mad, but just uneasy with all the sort of paranoia and like surveillance. You're surrounded by it every day. So like it was nice to read this and be like, okay, well, at least I was right that these things were watching us, you know, at some point. So, anyways, any way to find you online?
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook or Twitter really easily. Just search my name, Alleen Brown, and email address alleen.brown@theintercept.com. And if you need a secure communication channel, just send me a direct message, and you know, I have Signal. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. And yeah, we'll probably catch up with you later, I assume. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, Alleen did interview me during No DAPL, so there's like transparency. Like there was an interview that happened in the past, so that happened. But thanks so much for joining us. I'll keep in touch with your work. I have been, and it's great. So thank you so much for it.
Cool. Great. Thanks, Lorenzo.
Yeah, bye now. All right, so that was our special report. I hope everyone enjoyed it. There's just no way we covered everything in that article. If you want to take a look, you can look at the Intercept, and also on Unicorn Riot, we have kind of our own take on the leaks as well. A lot of focus on the National Sheriff's Association and our piece, because it's also another private institution. And I think that's something to really think about, is that this institution, TigerSwan, was providing and surveilling the public, providing that to a private institution and also to public institutions. But the private institution is not accountable. Like, you can't see how they're working, how they're discussing things unless these leaks happen. And so thankfully people can see the inner workings of TigerSwan, how they refer to the water protectors, to people who are engaged in sort of activist work. You know, they're using the terroristic language, military language, and that's what's being levied against people who are actively trying to defend water or just trying to actively stop a fossil fuel project. They're being viewed this way by the people being contracted. So anyways, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who joined us. If you like this stuff, definitely go to unicornriot.ninja, click support our work, and donate what you can. Start a recurring donation if you can. We're going to do our best to bring you more special reports about breaking topics, and definitely just keep following us for more news. Again, I'm Lorenzo with Unicorn Riot. We did that special report for you all. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.